Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted the most? What would you do if one day you discovered that your loved one not only deceived you, but was also involved in something far more horrifying? This story is not just about betrayal. It's a tale of dark secrets, the fight for justice, and how an ordinary person can change the course of events, even when the whole world seems against them. Listen until the end. You'll be amazed at how far one person can go to uncover the truth. I always knew something was wrong between Lana and me. It all started with small things. Late-night calls, sudden mood swings, her detachment. When she told me she was going to a party at a friend's place, I felt a pang of anxiety deep inside. I told her I didn't want her to go, but she just brushed me off. "You're always so dramatic. It's just a party." My jealousy turned into suspicion, and I decided to act. That evening, as she left the house dressed to impress in glitter and perfect makeup, I sat on the couch, trying to look indifferent. But as soon as the door closed behind her, I grabbed my jacket, took my keys, and followed her. Lana called a cab, and I, pretending it was a coincidence, got into my car and kept a safe distance. She stopped in front of a house I immediately recognized. It was my best friend Josh's place. Something inside me twisted. Why was she here? Josh never mentioned any party. I decided to wait outside and observe. The house windows were covered, but faint light seeped through the curtains. I could hear music and laughter but noticed nothing unusual. However, after some time, the music died down and I saw other guests leaving. Lana was still inside. I resolved to enter the house. I knew it was risky, but my suspicion had become unbearable. The back door was unlocked. I quietly slipped inside and heard her voice. She was laughing, and Josh was murmuring something to her. Their voices grew louder, and I realized they were heading upstairs. From the room where they were, I heard not only muffled sounds but also phrases that shattered my understanding of Josh and Lana. It turned out this wasn't the first time. Their affair had been going on for months. I froze in place, my heart pounding harder than ever. I opened the door to the room. The sight before me was horrifying, but what hurt the most was their lack of surprise. Lana looked at me coldly. "You knew all along, didn't you? You just didn't want to admit it." Josh stood up but didn't even try to explain. His only words were, "I'm sorry, man." But I didn't let him finish. Rage overwhelmed me. At that moment, I couldn't think rationally. All I felt was my world crumbling. My legs felt rooted to the floor. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? When did it start? How could I have been so blind? They stood before me. Lana with a hint of defiance in her gaze and Josh, looking uncomfortable but unashamed. Their indifference humiliated me more than the betrayal itself. My heart was pounding so hard that I could barely hear their words. "You knew this was coming," Lana said, her voice steady, with a glint of contempt in her eyes. "You just didn't want to face the truth." Josh remained silent, rubbing his temple as if this were inconvenient for him but far from catastrophic. His attempt to say, "I'm sorry, man," sounded so insincere it only made me laugh bitterly. I didn't want to create a scene. My emotions were boiling inside, but I knew they were just waiting to see me fall apart. I turned around and left without saying another word. The feeling of humiliation followed me all the way out of the house. The air felt heavy, and each step was incredibly painful. As I descended the stairs, I noticed the door to Josh's study was ajar. Usually, he kept it locked, citing important documents. Now it was wide open as if inviting me in. It was an impulsive move. I hadn't planned this, but I couldn't stop myself. Inside, it was dark. Moonlight filtered through the blinds. The desk was a mess. Papers, notes, a laptop with a black screen. My attention was drawn to an open drawer. Inside lay a small notebook with the initials JM. I opened it, not suspecting that this would change my life forever. The first page listed women's names, accompanied by dates, brief comments, and ratings. The more pages I turned, the more disgusting it became. Josh detailed his conquests with cynical precision. On the last pages, there were codes for accessing a video archive. My heart froze. This could be even worse. I quickly photographed the pages with my phone. My hands trembled as I put the notebook back. Josh wasn't just a traitor, he was a monster. He destroyed not only my trust but my belief in humanity. At home, I couldn't sit still. My legs felt weak, and my hands barely held my phone. I entered one of the codes into a browser, not fully understanding whether I even wanted to see what would come up. What appeared on the screen hit me like a truck. In a cloud storage folder were dozens of video files. Some were labeled with the names I'd seen in the notebook. I opened the first video. On the screen was an unfamiliar woman, completely unaware that she was being filmed. The camera was positioned to make it look accidental, but it was clear this was meticulously planned. I felt physically ill. Every time I tried to close the file, my hand involuntarily reached for the next one. One of the videos featured Lana. Her face was unmistakable, as was Josh's, laughing as he leaned toward her. This was too much. My heart pounded so hard I feared I'd pass out. How long had this been going on? Why was she part of this? I pushed the laptop away and started pacing the room. My mind was in chaos. I realized I couldn't let this slide. Josh had to answer for everything. I called my friend Alex, a cybersecurity expert. His voice was the only thing that calmed me down a bit. "This is serious," he said, reviewing the material. "There's a lot to dig into here, but it's a dangerous game. Do you have a plan?" I told him everything. We decided to carefully gather evidence and proceed cautiously. Alex helped uncover more about the people Josh was collaborating with. It turned out to be an entire network, and Josh wasn't the only one recording and distributing such videos. We also prepared materials for the police, but first I decided to confront Lana. I wanted to know how much she knew about this horrifying scheme. At the cafe, she came in confident, but when I showed her the evidence, her expression changed. Tears streamed down her face as she began to explain incoherently. "I didn't know. I thought it was just a game," she kept repeating. Her confession was disjointed, but I could see she was more of a victim than an accomplice. I decided to give her a chance to make amends by helping us gather evidence against Josh. Each new day brought new discoveries. We managed to find several other women willing to share their stories. But it wasn't easy. Fear and shame kept many of them silent. Lana actively helped, trying to atone for her guilt. She called some of the women and convinced them to come forward. Each of their stories helped us build a clearer picture of how dangerous Josh truly was. Their testimonies were powerful and moving, giving a voice to those who had been too afraid to speak. Thanks to them, our fight gained real meaning. Not just stopping Josh, but offering others a chance for justice. When we handed all the evidence over to the police, Josh was arrested. His network was exposed and he faced trial. It wasn't just justice, it was a victory over fear and silence. Lana left town, hoping to start a new life. I decided to change my life too, even though the past still weighed heavily on me. Meanwhile, Alex worked tirelessly on the evidence. He hacked into Josh's secured archives and uncovered proof that left no doubt about his crimes. Gathering evidence turned out to be far more challenging than I had imagined. Josh had deep connections and knew exactly how to cover his tracks. But his arrogance ultimately betrayed him. A notebook I found and materials from his cloud storage became the starting point for a full-scale investigation. Lana, Alex, and I found 3 women who were ready to share their stories. Each of them had endured Josh's manipulations, and each had fought her own battle. Melanie was an interior designer from Chicago. She met Josh at a corporate event her firm organized. He quickly won her trust with his charm and humor. Josh offered her a project, redesigning his apartment. They started spending a lot of time together. First, everything seemed professional. But then Josh began showing friendly attention, bringing her coffee, asking about her life. He convinced her it was completely normal to film the work process for personal memories. Melanie didn't suspect anything wrong until she discovered Josh had filmed her changing clothes in one of the rooms. He said it was an accident, she told us through tears. that the camera was for recording interviews and I just happened to be caught on it. But the video ended up in his cloud storage, and the comments Josh left showed it was far from accidental. Her story became the first major link in our chain of evidence. Jane was a waitress at a small bar in Brooklyn, where Josh was a regular customer. He became a familiar face, always leaving generous tips and pretending to genuinely care about her life. After a month, Josh suggested they take a weekend trip to New Jersey just to unwind. He seemed so thoughtful. He knew I was tired and needed a change of scenery, Jane said. The trip started wonderfully, but on the first night, Josh showed his true colors. He gave Jane cocktails and started playing games that seemed innocent but gradually crossed the line. Later, Jane discovered the entire encounter had been filmed on a hidden camera. When I realized he recorded it, I felt like a part of me had been stolen. I never gave my consent, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Her testimony helped us prove that Josh used manipulation to exert control over people. Rachel was a young actress dreaming of her Hollywood breakthrough. She met Josh at a party, where he introduced himself as a producer. He claimed he was looking for talent for his new project, a romantic film. He made me feel special. He said he saw something in me that others didn't, Rachel admitted. Josh invited her to auditions held in his private office. At first, it was regular acting scenes, but later, he convinced her to participate in private emotional tests. Rachel had no idea the room was equipped with hidden cameras recording her most vulnerable moments. When she found out, it was a devastating blow. He convinced me it was necessary for the role. I felt I had to agree if I wanted to succeed. The video of Rachel was also among the files we uncovered in his notebook. Her story became crucial in proving that Josh abused his position of power for personal gain. A few months had passed since Josh's trial. Although his network had been exposed and he was sentenced to years in prison, peace still felt unattainable. Memories of the events haunted me even in my sleep. Occasionally, I received calls from lawyers or women who had been victims of his crimes. Their stories were no less horrifying. I decided to radically change my life. My old home had become a reminder of betrayal, so I sold it and moved to a small, quiet town in Oregon, far from the chaos that had engulfed me before. One morning, while walking by a local lake, a woman approached me. She was wearing a light dress, and her short blonde hair was blowing in the wind. "You're Alex, right?" she asked. I nodded, surprised that someone here knew me. "My name is Sarah," she said. "I was one of Josh's victims. You probably don't remember me, but your work to expose him saved me." We sat on a bench by the water, and Sarah shared her story. Josh had deceived her into his schemes by promising to help her career. Her life had been shattered, but now she worked for an organization helping other women recover from similar situations. "I heard that you suffered because of him too, but what you did is incredible," she said, looking me in the eye. Her words touched me deeply. We started talking more often, and soon Sarah became more than just a friend. Her strength and determination inspired me to keep moving forward. Thanks to Sarah, I realized that my experience could help others. Together, we decided to create a project to support women who had been victims of sexual violence and exploitation. We called it Justice. The local community supported our initiative, and the organization began to grow quickly. We provided legal assistance, therapy, and educational programs to prevent such crimes. Sarah was the face of our organization. Her sincerity and openness drew people in. I handled the technical side, analyzing data and collaborating with cybersecurity experts to uncover networks like the one Josh had led. One day I received a letter. The sender's address was familiar. It was Lana. In a short message, she wrote that she wanted to meet and apologize. Sarah supported my decision to give her a chance. We met at a small cafe. Lana looked different, thinner, with shadows in her eyes that spoke of her difficult journey. "I wanted to thank you, Alex," she began. "You pulled me out of that hell. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to be a better person." Lana shared that she now worked as a volunteer at a center for victims of violence in another city. Her story was an unexpected conclusion to what had once felt like a betrayal. As time went on, my life began to fill with purpose. The Justice Project grew beyond anything I could have imagined. We managed to help hundreds of women, and Josh and others like him could no longer escape accountability. Sarah became an essential part of my life. Her support helped me not only find meaning but also open up to new emotions. Together, we proved that even the darkest moments could lead to a brighter future. The Justice Project quickly gained popularity. We began receiving requests for help from across the country. It was both a testament to our work's effectiveness and a challenge. Scaling required resources we didn't yet have. Sarah suggested reaching out to influential people who could support us financially. Initially, I hesitated as it meant stepping into the public eye, but I realized it was the only way. We organized a charity event in the city center. Sarah shone on stage, sharing our mission and achievements. Her speech was so heartfelt that even the toughest businessmen wiped away tears. The event raised a significant amount, allowing us to open a new center in Los Angeles. One day, I received an anonymous letter. Inside were photos of Sarah and me taken during the charity event, along with a threat. If you don't stop, the consequences will be severe. At first, I thought it was just someone unhappy with our work. But soon, more letters and messages started arriving. We contacted the police, but this only seemed to escalate the tension. Sasha, my friend and a cybersecurity expert, decided to investigate the origins of these messages. He discovered that they were linked to one of Josh's former partners, whom we had exposed through collected evidence. This man had evaded arrest, but his business suffered, and now he was trying to intimidate us. We knew we had to act. Otherwise, our work would be jeopardized. With Sasha, we decided to gather more evidence to prove this man's involvement in criminal activities. It was risky, but we couldn't let fear stop us. Sarah supported us, though she was worried. She said, "If we give up now, we betray everyone we promised to help." We began the investigation. Sasha hacked into the man's secured company servers, uncovering not only the threats but also evidence of ongoing illegal activities. Armed with this evidence, we handed it over to the FBI. A few weeks later, a raid led to the man's arrest. It was a huge relief but also a reminder of how dangerous our work could be. Despite the risks, we understood the need for even greater caution. Our project had become not just a means of helping victims but also a way to combat those who abused their power for evil. Sarah and I decided to get married. It was a symbol not only of our love but also of how even the darkest moments in life could lead to something beautiful. The wedding was modest but filled with warmth and love. After the wedding, we continued expanding our activities. We opened several more centers in different cities and started collaborating with international organizations. One day, while checking the mail, I found a letter without a return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with the message, "You made the right choice, but the game isn't over." Although it was chilling, I no longer felt fear. I knew that Sarah, our friends, and the thousands we had helped stood behind me. Most importantly, I knew that I would never again let fear or criminals win. The threatening letter remained on my desk for several days. I kept staring at it, trying to figure out who might have sent it. We knew our work had angered many of the people we had exposed. But this letter felt personal, as if someone wanted to signal they were still watching me. Sarah noticed my unease. She picked up the letter, looked at it, and said, "This might just be an attempt to intimidate us. But we've been through worse. We won't let them win." Her words reassured me. Yet deep down, I felt this threat wasn't just an empty gesture. A few days later, I was summoned to the local FBI office. The officer handling our case showed me a photograph of a man we had previously exposed. He had been released on bail, but now his associates were becoming active again. "We've received information that these individuals are planning something against you or your project. You need to be careful," the officer said. This was a wake-up call. We tightened security at the office, installed surveillance cameras at home and in our center. Sarah seemed calm, but I knew she felt the tension too. One evening, as I returned home, I saw that our front door had been broken open. A wave of fear washed over me. I called the police before stepping inside. When we entered, it was clear this was more than just a burglary. All of our documents related to the project were scattered everywhere. The computers were smashed. It seemed as though someone had been searching for something very specific. "This is a warning," the detective said. "They're not after your money. They want your evidence." The next day, I received an unexpected call. The voice on the other end introduced himself as Julian, a former associate of one of our enemies. "I know what you're looking for, and I can help," he said. "But it's dangerous for both of us." We arranged to meet in a public place. Julian told me that the organization we were trying to dismantle had ties to high-ranking officials. They controlled not just businesses but also parts of law enforcement structures, and now they were determined to silence us. "I left all of this behind years ago," he said. "But I see that you might actually be able to stop them." Julian handed us several crucial documents that backed up his claims. It was more than we could have hoped for. Together with Sasha and Julian, we devised a plan. We gathered enough evidence to expose not just individuals but an entire network. Sarah worked with journalists who agreed to publish the materials as soon as we completed the case. But our adversaries weren't idle either. We received anonymous calls and we were being followed. One day, Sarah was nearly run over by a car that sped off immediately after. That was the last straw. We held a press conference where we presented all the evidence we had uncovered. Our enemies tried to discredit us, but the facts spoke for themselves. Shortly afterward, the FBI carried out a series of arrests. It was a victory, but it came at a great cost. We realized that the real fight was just beginning. After the incident, we decided to move to another state. The Justice Project continued its work, but we operated with greater caution. Sarah said, "We can't save the whole world, but we can give people hope." I looked at her and realized that despite all the hardships, it was worth it. Life isn't just about struggle. It's about finding light even in the darkest corners. We started a new chapter of our lives, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. But one thing was certain: we would never stay silent again. This story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, it's worth fighting for the truth. Every choice we make can be an important step towards justice. What would you have done in the main character's shoes? How would you handle betrayal, threats, and a desperate fight for truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the hero was right to risk everything for justice?